Let's go to Craig in Thornbury. Craig, good morning to you.
Oh, good morning, John.
So we have one school that's changed its name, as Christine just said there. We've got a private school and another school which has got the name Colston attached to it. A lot of other things in Bristol have as well. Time to get rid of them.
Personally, no. But
why?
I used to be quite against it, but I've given in because you'll find that the people that have the biggest views are the people that take notice of infants and children that know nothing about the big picture. It could quite easily be swayed by teachers and their parents. And I find that quite a strange way to debate things and make, change certain views.
But surely they have, if they're at the school, they should be involved in the process rather than just being imposed on them.
They're infants and primary children. They don't give a damn, do they? They just want to play and learn. That's all they want to do.
Okay.
They don't have lessons on slave trade, slave history, or Churchill bombing Hamburg and killing tens of thousands of people, like you said just now. Do we celebrate that sort of history? We celebrate Churchill as a great leader, saviour of the country, but we don't celebrate him, the bad side of what he did. And I'm not saying we celebrate Colston that way, and I'm not saying we should, but we should accept that was the way it was then.
But isn't this the problem with history? When it's actually happening, and again, this is factual, that slavery, slave trade, and although Edward Colston was heavily involved in it, and indeed was an officer of the company that had the monopoly on it, it was a legal trade. Whether it was moral or not is a completely different issue to the legality. It was legal. Of acts of war, such as the bombing of Dresden that you're talking about there, or the bombing of the centre of Bristol, which created Broadmead that we know today. We're friends with the Germans now. We've come to terms with that. We haven't come to terms with our slave past and the wealth of Bristol and Bath and Liverpool and London that generated off slavery. So maybe we need to address this, and maybe not celebrating slavery is a way of doing it.
But the point is, the media, I'll say the media, and I mean you're part of the problem, the BBC, jumping on the bandwagon of these parents that take notice of their children is the problem.
I'm not jumping on anyone's bandwagon. I'm debating it.
I'm not saying you. I'm talking the media. Okay.
Yeah, I understand.
You had a lady on just now saying, "Oh, it was a brilliant job. We listened to what the children wanted." Well, children are children. They're not adults. They don't know the total full picture, and their mindset is on two simple things, isn't it? Having fun and playing and basic stuff. And to have a society that thinks that is fantastic, to take notice of children, infants, let's change the name of the school. Why? And then they debate it, and I don't know. I like the way that person talked. Didn't like what he said. You shouldn't be having a discussion based on what children said.
Okay.
And changing our city and our history based on what children want. I think that's wrong, isn't it? It's like saying, what do you want for tea? You've got 4 kids, you've got to make 4 different meals rather than, here's your dinner, eat up, and that's it. I mean, that's part of today's society. I've never understood that mentality.
As a dad myself, I know exactly where you're coming from. I always say to my children, you get what you're given. I'm not a restaurant. Let me
that's because you're using common sense. But
I've got a lot of calls to get through, Craig. Let me just ask you this: forget the children now. You're an adult. You're an adult. You know Bristol. You know the history of Bristol. It's connected to Edward Colston. We've got a hall that will change its name. We've got a street. We've got a tower. We've got a pub. We've got 2 other schools. Should they change their names?
No.
Why not?
Because it's our history, isn't it? It is our history. Where do you stop? You mentioned the tobacco factory. You mentioned the sugar. Sugar's another bad one. Cotton's another one.
Yeah.
It's endless, isn't it? Half the buildings up White Ladies Road are built from the slave trade profits. Even probably the building you're in. St Paul's was built from merchants' money back in the day. So, half of Bristol are living in properties that were built by the profits from the slave trade. Where do you stop, John? I just find it... I'm speechless half the time with what sort of people's mentality is. They should be concentrating on what's happening today with today's slave trade that's going on in Britain.
Craig, thank you very much indeed for joining me this morning. Good to hear from you.
Text John on 81333 and start your message with Bristol.
0345 905 949. Should everything named Colston in Bristol now have its name changed. Let's go to Mildred. Mildred, good morning.
Morning, John.
In Knoll. How's Knoll this morning?
Okay.
Good. Glad to hear it.
Just okay.
Okay, it's Monday, isn't it?
Monday. Yeah.
Tell me, should everything in Bristol now have its name changed if it's called Colston?
No.
Why not?
It's been said so many times. Colston lived in the day. He lived in the year, and when it was accepted that you had the slave trade, that was part of history. I know we don't condone it, but there's an awful lot of slavery going on in this day and age as well. And also, you must remember that the Africans sold a lot of their own people into slavery. It wasn't just the.
No, it would be anybody who thinks that this is just a white on black issue is at best naive. Because it really wasn't a white on black issue. There are many layers, and there were a lot of tribal rights being put wrong or wrongs being put right within the slave trade, and a lot of that still goes on today in various forms. If you look at what's going on in Sudan, for example, South and North Sudan, it's tribes and tribes.
The gentleman before me, he mentioned about sugar. Yes, are we going to rename Finzel's Reach? Because Finzel was a sugar trader.